woo, woo, woo. Big dog.
Whoop, whoop. I was muted.
Welcome to Coffee Hour. You made it to the end of the week. Glad to have you here. Whoop, whoop. You didn't get to hear all that goodness that we start off with, but again, thanks everybody for joining
Big
us.
dog.
You did it. You made it to the end of the week. You know it's a favorite time of your day to join me on Coffee Hour.
Okay, even with that voice. Wow. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We did it. We got to the end of the week. Hopefully, if any of you through the week had any turmoil or anything that hit you, you're able to get over that hump and get through it and get it resolved because the weekend's here. And I tell you what, they come quickly. They may seem slow when you're younger and you're like, dude, this crap just drags on. But when you get older, man, it's just like whip, whip, whip. And just so, all right. So again, welcome. Today's show is sponsored by Trade Hog. So if you get a chance, check out Trade Hog and go give it a whirl. See what you get. Ooh, it's time for me to wash this hat. If you see it, you know. If you know, you know. So I've been working around the Guru compound here in the last week, getting things all cleaned up and just a lot of little stuff to do. Exciting day for me. My excavator arrives today. Hey, I don't know if I have I have that.
Woo, woo, woo. Big dog.
And let's see, what else do I have I could do here? I got raise the roof, whatever. My little mini excavator comes today, so look for videos on that. Just for funny videos. I know nothing about mini excavators, so if I kill myself in the process, y'all will get to witness it. Well, I don't know. If that happens, who's going to upload it? I guess Jeff will upload it. Who knows? But anyway, good morning. Thank you. Do me a favor. I always live vicariously through all of you, so do me a favor. In the comments, let me know who you are, where you're from, how you're doing, what you got going on. If you just took an exam, you're preparing for an exam, you're taking an exam soon. Anything you want to share, please do so in the comments, and I will share them on the screen, and we'll try to answer what we can. Yeah, cool. Yesterday, my buckets came. For those that saw my posts on social media, I got a mud bucket. It's about I think it's a 500 millimeter. It's about 19 or 20 inches mud bucket. It's not as big as I thought it was, so I'm definitely going to go bigger. I got a rake. I got a mini bucket for trenching because I got to get power to the new garage that we're going to be building. Show y'all that on some videos too, so that'd be neat. You can see us doing that garage. That'd be pretty cool to watch over on our YouTube channel. Be pretty cool. What else do we got going on? Oh, anyway, the mini excavator arrives today. I'll give you the walk around video. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. We got a Triumph called a Triumph Terror 17, and it is a 1.7 ton mini excavator. I'm not delusional in what it can do, and I certainly have been visually working the controls, right? So I'm like, I don't have it yet, but I'm like, okay, the left control extends the arm out and back. The right one, if you pull back, it raises the boom up. Okay, kind of like an airplane. When you're going up, you pull back on the stick, push forward, the boom goes down. The right stick, you move it to the left, it curls the bucket in. You move it to the right, it curls the bucket out. On the left, if you move it to the left, the turret turns to the left and the right. And if you click a switch and you move it to the left, then just the boom goes to the left and to the right. So you flip the switch back off and you're back to the whole turret will move left or right. So I think I got the controls down. Okay. And there's a forward tracks, back tracks, to the left, to the right. Got that. It's got a dozer bucket on it. A little thing will raise and lower the dozer bucket. If I'm digging on the front, I put the blade down for extra stability. Don't try to lift heavy loads when it's on its side because it could tip to the side. Always do it in front of you or position yourself with the boom to the right and you to the left. And anyway, I have been researching it. Y'all know how I am. I get anal on that stuff. But it doesn't mean a thing until you put it in play. So that ought to be funny to see me do that on a mini excavator. I'll try to record as much of it as I can. So it'll be hilarious, no doubt. Okay, let's today's lesson, we're going to be talking about kitchens today. Somebody sent me an email and said you talked about bathrooms in the hall yesterday. Yeah, it seems like that's a cat controls. So I guess that's the way I see it's a mini excavator. That's the way it seems like it works. So I'll be playing with it. I'm sure I'll be herky jerky as hell, but hey, I'm gonna have fun with it. Got a bunch of little projects here, but I didn't get it for any other reason but to play, and it was a great deal. Those things are going for like $14,000 and $15,000 now. I got it for $9,700 before the tariffs, and they honored it. So I feel like I got a great deal because the motor is a Kubota diesel D902, and that itself is about $6,000. So I think it's a pretty good deal. And I believe that unlike some of the other models that come from overseas, this one's from Singapore, but I feel like it's a little better constructed. It looks like Typhoon's has a little bit better game, but of course I'll be going through it, tightening all the bolts, tightening all the hydraulic tubes, and I'll be doing that anal stuff as always before I even get started. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks for joining me. We're going to go over kitchens and talk about some kitchen circuits today because I got an email from somebody who said, Paul, you talked about bathrooms and halls. Would you logically go next step and let's talk a little bit about kitchen requirements? And I said, sure. And that person may or may not be on here today, but I did tell him I have no problem going into that topic for today. Okay. Now, before I do get started, I want to do some shout outs to you folks because, again, this is all about you joining me every day in the morning at 8 a.m. East Coast time, okay, like 5 o'clock or so on the West Coast time. Got my coffee. Yes, I do have coffee in it. Look, right there. You see it? Okay. No Diet Coke today, or Pepsi, excuse me, but we've got the Pepsi here in case I need it. An extra caffeine. And again, as always, make sure you do #win. The emails have already started going out. A couple people got their emails. I know John Moser got his emails, and Melting Toast. I got your email. Just so you know, you were one of the ones we were waiting on at the end. We got it. So they'll start coming out. So rest assured, if you don't get an email in the next week or two and you were a winner, just reach out. But give us a little time now. Jeff is starting to get those out now. So good news. But we are in the spin for the next quarter. Okay, that type of thing. So that's all in place. All right, it is Friday. We are at Beatbox Friday, if that's what it is. But let's see. Clicking Friday? Clicking? You want some clicking? You want a little scratching? All right. Enough of that today. All right. I'm a 56-year-old man. I can't be doing that on a Friday. All right. What's up, Paul? Thanks for joining us, Paul. Glad to have you here. This is me. Good morning, peeps. Look at me. I'm on Facebook. Man, I'm on all these platforms. Check it out. There's me. There's me on Coffee Hour with Paul. Hell, that means that if I did the spin to win, hell, I'd win everything, right? Okay. Anyway, there you go. There is our Electrical Code Academy on LinkedIn. There you go. I'm in all these channels. What's up? What's up, David, down in Florida, joining us today. Busy guy down there, Plans Examiner. I believe it's Naples, right? Beautiful area, high dollar area, by the way. So we know that's why David gets the big bucks down there. What's up, Jonathan? Did it. Beatbox Friday. Glad to have you here. Tom, definitely will get your stuff caught up today, Tom. Don't worry, we will get you caught up. Your clock has stopped, so you're okay. You're fine. What's up, Jay? What's up? Thanks for joining me. Jay, is that you also over there on Instagram? We don't get the feeds from Instagram, so I don't know if that's you over there. What's up, Battles Electric? Coming off of that amazing inspection success. Glad to have you here. Beatbox Friday. There you go. Thanks, Frank. Glad to be here every day. He says I was on mute. Yeah, I was on mute, dude. I had an intro on fire, and what was I? I muted it. So I make mistakes all the freaking time. So there you go. Let's see here. Robert joined us. I saw Robert subscribe to Fast Tracks Tube. I believe Jeff sent me something that said that. So fix my hat here. Congratulations on that, Robert. And hopefully you got my email. If you didn't understand the email, just reply to it. Let me know if something wasn't clear in my email. Sometimes I may answer as yours I was doing while I was traveling or on the road doing something. So hopefully you got the answer. But if not, again, sometimes you do have a transformer that is outside or remote, and that is where we would make the connection. and put the grounding electrode and the grounding electrode system and everything as well. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the location. However, there are other rules you have to follow, and I think I gave you all those rules. Let's see, Jonathan, again, good morning to all the nerds, code nerds that are out there. Rob did get your email as well, my friends, just so you know. Good morning. Let's see here. Rob is on all kinds of platforms as well, increasing his odds. What's up, Cray Cray? It's in the house from Nashville, Tennessee. Glad to have you here on a Friday. Let's see here. Francis is in the house. Welcome, Francis. Glad to have you here. Let's see. Jonathan's North Alabama. And Rob says, big scoops only. That's what I'm talking about. Good morning. Let's see here. Let's see. Raymond.
Woo, 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 woo.
There we go.
Big dog.
Scatty's in the house. See, Sia Alt. See, Cy Alt. Atlanta? Explain that one to me. What's up, Manny? Good morning. Ryan Jackson and Vince Delacroce both say hi. Both loved my Code Nerd hoodie. There you go. Great guys. Both Ryan and Vincent. Both great guys. I don't know what Ryan thinks of me, to be honest with you. I don't know. But I like Vince. Vince is my boy. He is the man, too. Love Vince. And gives of himself unconditionally. Vince does. Talk about a warrior for code and a warrior for trade, the trades, and great addition to Siemens, and Vince Delacroce is everywhere, and just one of those rare guys that if you knew you need him, I mean, it's too much to ask. He's many states away, but if he was near you and you needed something, that dude would drop everything to be there for you. That's the kind of guy Vince Delacroce is. Just amazing, and I'm sure Ryan's the same way, that type of thing. So, Peter, good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Let's see. You have it set in cat controls. Is that what I described as cat controls? Because I wouldn't know the damn difference, to be honest with you. They say they're switchable to some other type of standard, but I'm not doing that. I'm going to learn whatever it comes with. That's what I'm going to use. What's up, Tara? Okay, good morning from Joe Wheeler Lake in North Alabama. Glad to have you here. Terrence, glad to have you here from up in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, contractor up there. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Raymond's in the house. Let's see. David's in the house. Good morning, David. Glad to have you here. Watching over on the tube. Nepo's in the house. Shouting out to all the Spark heads out there. Glad to have you here. Watching on YouTube channel. Let's see here. Rob says, they are fun to run. Always a good day. Okay, well, you'll enjoy it because, again, you're going to watch it. People are going to live vicariously through me making total fool of myself trying to run a mini excavator, and it should be interesting. Okay, it's real easy to say, okay, boom, straight out, straight back, main boom up, main boom down, curl the bucket, uncurl the bucket, throw it out. And I kind of remember it this way. The right one, the joystick, pull back, raise it up. It's like an airplane. Push forward on the right one, it goes down like an airplane. Move the right joystick in to the left, and it's kind of like curl, like you're curling, like an arm wrestler would curl. And then to do it to the right, it opens up. So there's kind of ways to remember it. The left hand, again, move it out. The boom will move, the lower part where the bucket is, that'll move out on the same plane, and you pull it back and it'll move back. And then okay. So that's my mentality. But when you're in the seat, and also I have to drive it off of the flatbed down the ramps. Never driven one before in my life. So if I record that and the sucker falls off and it kills me, I'm not going to stream it live because you know what? I don't need those warning labels on everything. But I'm to be the one that have to take it off. So I'm mentally prepared. Forward, back. It's ought to be a trip. Anyway, but you know what? If I flip it, and as long as it doesn't kill me, it's okay. It'll be fun. Yep, going to pick up a grease gun and get it all greased up and keep those Zerks. Is that what they're called? Zerks? Is that what they are? I don't know anything about it. Zerks. I got to keep it greased up, so I definitely will do that. What's up, Greg? Glad to have you here. Christopher's throwing out the win. This is how you do it right here. Win to get it on a spin. I'm definitely going to get a grease gun, Robert. Absolutely. Going to get one and keep it greased. What's up, Michael? Glad to have you here. Brandon's in the house. Good morning from down in Houston. Brandon, you got this. Relax. You got this. You're going to nail it. No worries. What's up, Jonathan? In the house. Glad to have you here. We've got Red Dog.
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
It's in the house. Glad to have you here, my friend. James is in the house. Salt Lake, Utah. At the moment, coming off 712s. You know, Ryan Jackson's from Utah. Up there in that area, somewhere along there. Let's see here where we got. And he's also an amazing educator. So if you get a chance to attend a Vincent or Ryan's seminar or training event or an IAI meeting that they're at, you should definitely make it a point to attend. Say Paul sent you. I'm not a big supporter of IAEI anymore, but I am a supporter of those folks. So great. Yeah, Tom, Vince, very well spoken, just a cool dude. Just a cool. He's actually in my video series where we did pools and spas because we served together on Code Panel 17. He does the lion's share of the work on Code Panel 17. I mean, I sit back these days and just go, But Vince is a worker. He is a worker, buddy, and is great at it, and that type of thing. So, Edgar, thanks for having you, Edgar. Glad to have you here. Brandon said, does anybody else have trouble with feeder tap rules? Now, we have a feeder tap video over on Fast Tracks Tube, Brandon. I don't know if you're a subscriber to that. Probably not. But feeder taps are really not nearly as complicated as you think. In fact, we have a whole webinar on it over there on Fast Tracks Tube. As long as you understand the concepts of the 10-foot, 25-foot, unlimited, as long as you understand those limitations and just following it piece by piece, then you'll have no problem with it. But you take it piece by piece. But on an exam, it's not going to be that complicated, okay? You have the feeder, and you'll be tapping the feeder. You're tapping the feeder. Those conductors are tapping. The reason they're called feeder taps, 240.21b, is the reason that they're tapping it is because they don't have overcurrent protection at the tap. So everything's going to be based, typically the size of the feeder's overcurrent or a percentage of that. And you just go down the list and meet each thing. Do they terminate, for example, in the 10-foot rule, is the feeder tap from the point it taps to the point where it terminates in the overcurrent device, is that 10 feet or less? Okay. Yes. If you're tapping it and you're saying, okay, do I follow each one of the little rules? Do one at a time. It is not that complicated. Just take it, breathe, and focus this next couple days. But if you're really concerned about it, which I can promise you, I would not be overly concerned for an exam. You're not going to get a bunch of feeder tap questions that are going to make or break it. You're not, okay? So don't let that rot in the brain thinking, oh, I'm going to get all these feeder tap questions, because you're not. That type of thing. Might get one, but they're fairly simple if you just walk through it. The key is if they tell you, they got to tell you the distance, okay? And they will tell you if it's right beside it, you use a 10-foot tap rule. If it is not more than 25 feet, but it's over 10, you'll be using a 25-foot tap rule, that type of thing. The interesting thing about feeder taps, though, is that if I have a feeder and I have a conductor from a feeder that's, say, 500 kc mil, and I tap it with a 500 kc mil, that is not a feeder tap. That's just an extension of that circuit because it's the same size as the feeder. Okay, so it wouldn't qualify as a tap. Okay, it's just a splice, that type of scenario. Okay, so the whole premise of a feeder tap is to tap a feeder with a conductor that's not typically the same size as the feeder. It's smaller, and we're trying to ensure that it's protected by the overcurrent device that's protecting the feeder, even though there's no overcurrent protection at the point where the feeder tap originates. Those type of things. Okay, so again, certainly not as complicated as it's made out to seem, but we have a video on that over on Fast Tracks Tube. Make sure you check that out if you have it. Let's see here. Where are we at here? Yes, grease those zerts. I am going to do that. Not going to do it right away because I want to get it out and I will start tightening things up. But over the next weekend, I'm going to get the grease gun and get everything greased up. And it's supposed to be already greased up, but probably not the case coming from China. Okay, people say buy American. No, I want it cheap. I'm cheap. That's what I bought. Okay, good morning, John from Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you. Glad you have here. Let's see. Good morning, Charlie. Glad to have you here. Okay, I'm watching. You watching the 10-foot rule on Tube? There you go. There you go. Val. YouTube can be a great resource. Just be careful who you watch and what you listen to. And again, it's not always the best trusted source. Okay, that type of thing. Robert, I replied to your email. So if you didn't get it, it's gone into your junk mail. But I did reply to your question. So we might have to revisit that. But I did reply to your question. It was sent. You might want to check your junk mail. A lot of my stuff goes to spam and to junk. Let's see here. From what I understand, the tap has to be smaller than the feeder conductor. In order to make it be a tap rule allowance, because that's the whole premise of a feeder tap, is you're tapping a feeder with a conductor that's not the same ampacity or has no overcurrent protection at the tap location. If it was the same exact size, okay, and people calling me on the phone this morning with the thought that I'm going to answer a phone while I'm doing coffee hour. Really? Really? So you tap the feeder and you're tapping it with a conductor, okay? So that type of scenario, all right? All right, so let's just get this going here. Let's see here, where are we at? Angel, I am doing great this morning. Glad to have you here. Frank, let us know when you can flip a quarter. What? What are you talking about? Let's see. Beanie's Garage morning from New Brunsville, Texas. Glad to have you here. What is up, Alex? Good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Let's see. Watch out, because some Zerks are like 10,000 hour Zerks. I don't know what that means. I'm going to Zerk it till it can't be Zerked no more. I'm going to Zerking full. I don't twerk, but I Zerk. Let's see here. Carlos, good morning. Glad to have you here. All right. Everybody here, thank you for joining me. Let's see here. Bear with me 1 second. I did have an emergency call that looks like something's wrong. So bear with me 1 second, folks. Let me check this out. Okay, sorry about that. It was a switchgear issue with somebody, so I had to fix that. Hold on here. I don't know why this is doing everything. Dude, I am totally screwing this stuff up. Anyway, sorry about that. Had a switchgear issue. I knew it was from last night. A guy had a switchgear that blew up, and I knew that he would call me this morning. He has an issue, and I need to walk them. So I'll do that after coffee hour. All right, so anyway, there you go. Sorry about that. Not real organized. If him, let's see here. Let me go on and get, okay. So let's do it quick. So everybody know that this episode is sponsored by Trade Hawk, so check that out. And so today we're going to talk about kitchens, and we're going to do a little bit of talking about circuits, small appliance brand circuit, as well as the lighting application for the kitchen, okay? Okay. All right, so there we go. He'll wait for my call. All right, let's see here. Sorry, guys. Let me make sure he's okay before I told him not to call during coffee hour, but sometimes instructions don't get conveyed very well, so bear with me here. Gives you an opportunity to put something in the chat while I'm waiting to see what's going on with him. All right, let's go on. All right, let's get into today's lesson. All right, so here's our objective today. Here's our objective today. We're going to be talking about, so in this lesson today, what we're going to be talking about is summarize the lighting for typical kitchen and dining room layout. We're going to explain the installation operation of kitchen exhaust fans. I don't know why we need to explain that today, but we will see what's on the slide. We'll summarize NEC requirements of small appliance branch circuits in a kitchen. Again, if you don't know, we will quantify all of that for you. And summarize the NEC requirements for GFCI protection for all receptacles that serve countertops in the kitchen. But I think you'll see under the 2023 NEC that, again, it's not going to be just for those that serve the countertop, right? So it'll be a little more broader than that today in this lesson, right? All right, let's do this. I got an amazing itch there. Okay. All right, so we're going to explain the requirements of AFCI protection of branch circuits that serve a kitchen. For you that are like, whoa, what about the AFCI requirements? Okay, well, we're going to talk about those. Determine whether individual branch circuits should be installed for a refrigerator or other appliance and what the code says about it, because there's a lot of people that don't understand that the refrigerator can be on the small appliance branch circuit. In fact, the way the code describes it, it is to be on the small appliance branch circuit. However, we have allowances in there that says, you know what, if you want to run an individual branch circuit to the refrigerator or other appliances that are in your kitchen, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. And we've done that forever. But the thing about the refrigerator is that it made it imply that it had to be on the small appliance branch circuit. And it would if we didn't have the allowance that says, you know what, I'll let you run an individual branch circuit if you want to that refrigerator. And guess what? It could be 15 amp. It doesn't have to be 20, that type of thing. So anyway, we'll look at all that. Let's see here. Now we'll determine whether it might be desirable to install a multi-wire branch circuit and a split-wired receptacle in areas where a high concentration of plug-in appliance might be used. We'll talk about an application where we may have a receptacle that is split and you might run a garbage disposer and a dishwasher on a multi-wire branch circuit. That type of scenario. Maybe that's how you design your system. Okay, maybe we'll talk about something similar to that. All right, let's talk about a kitchen really quickly. Now again, before I get started, we are in the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code. That's what we're using in our program. You may be on the 2020. You may be even on the 2017. By the way, we are not selling any courses at Electrical Code Academy anymore on the 2017. Everything is 2020 or 2023, so keep that in mind. If you're interested in a 2017 program, you should have got it before we cut it off. It is what it is, okay? So if you're in one of those areas that are testing on 2017, can you pass an exam using the 2020? You can. Is it going to take a little more work? Yes, because you'll need both code books so you can make sure that you quantify what exactly changed. Are there enough significant changes that I think that it would cause somebody to fall off a cliff when they're studying? No, I don't. But it certainly would go against my general rule is when I tell people always study with the course that matches whatever they're testing on. But I understand that in some cases that's not possible. And for us, since we're not going to offer the 2017 anymore, we still support people that have the 2017, but we're not going to be selling any more 2017's programs. So in that scenario, because we're in that final year before the 2026 comes out, and we usually will drop off one of the code cycles when we do that, especially if a significant number of states have now moved to the 2020 or later. And so there's only a handful that are still testing on 2017. So it just is what it is, okay? So no emails saying, Paul, can you make an exception for me to get the 2017? The answer to that's going to be no, we can't. All right, so kitchen. What is a kitchen? Defined term in the National Electrical Code defines a kitchen, okay, as an area with a sink and permanent provisions for food preparation and cooking, okay? So there you go. It says permanent provisions are in place even though the appliance may not be permanent, okay? So what we mean by this, so let's say that you're doing a design of a house, okay? Just give you an example. Let's say you're doing design and you're in a house and it's got a gas range, okay? Well, there's no permanent provisions in there for cooking that's electric, but if they were to put the receptacle in, a 50 amp, let's say, receptacle for a future range that could be electric, then that is considered a permanent provision, whether or not the appliance is there or not. If the ability to put one in is there, they put the receptacle in, they have it wired for a 50 amp, let's say, then that would be a permanent provision. Just because they're choosing to use gas at the time of installation, that type of thing, right? And the igniter receptacle for a gas range can be on the small appliance branch circuit. It's not going to pull anything. Code has specific allowances for that, right? So there you go. And but if it just, even though the appliance is not there, okay, then for like a range, it's not permanent. It's in the space. But just remember, if the receptacle outlet is there, okay, then it's going to have to be calculated out. And if you don't know what it is, it's going to be the minimum of 220.55. Okay. If you're using the optional method, it's going to be the nameplate, whatever it may be. Okay. So that type of thing. And you get to apply some demands as well. But if you're not familiar with how to do load calculations or single family dwellings or using a standard or optional method, you definitely want to watch it. A couple weeks ago, we did a complete series on that. And that's still probably available on YouTube. But the best way to watch it is to go over on Fast Tracks 2, get a subscription over there, and watch the separate videos for optional and standard method that are over on Fast Tracks Tube. And there's a series of that. It's probably the best way to learn about doing load calculations, that type of thing. Okay. All right. Back to the lesson. All right, so that's that. Now, 120 volt single phase, 10, 15, and 20 ampere, and you know my opinion on this right here. Okay, branch circuits that supply outlets for appliances require AFCI protection. Okay, so this one you see 120. This is talking about the branch circuit. Okay. If you see the requirement rules for GFCI protection, it's typically going to be under 210.8, and it's going to say 125 through 250, right? Those are NEMA ratings. That's the device's rating. But the circuit itself, we use the nominals. So just the branch circuit to a range would be a 240. A branch circuit to the lighting circuit would be a 120 volt. The branch circuit to the receptacles is still going to be a 120. So this rule is just saying, look, 120 volt single phase, 15, 10, or 20 branch circuits supplying outlets. And again, this would be receptacle outlets. This would be lighting outlets. It's just outlets, okay? Don't confuse this term with receptacles. They're devices. Still, people today get this confused. When we say outlets in the context here, we're talking about it could be hardwired or it could be cord and plug. Okay, the outlet is the point where we take power from the system. Okay, that could be, again, from a hard wire point, junction box, or from a cord and plug connection. Okay, this is about the branch circuit because it's 120 volts. Okay, so that's keeps you understanding that when you see something that's 125, 250, that's a rating of a device. 120, 240s, 277s, 480s, those are circuit ratings. Okay, for the actual circuit. All right, we're going to be talking about the circuit, and today we'll be looking at a B7 circuit. Okay, so AFCI protection is required for the lighting branch circuit. A feed-through receptacle may be used for this protection. All right, type AFCI circuit breakers installed at the panel board is more practical. So they do make an AFCI type of receptacle, right? And it works very much like a GFCI when it comes to the feed-through aspect of it, okay? So they typically, these, they are located at the first receptacle location, just like you would a GFCI, okay? And it offers protection upstream and it offers protection downstream, okay? For that type of thing. All right, so let's look at the circuits in question, and I'll blow this up just so you can see a little bit better. So this is our, for demonstration purposes, this is our B7 circuit right here, okay? All right, so if you can see right here, here's the B7 coming in right here, and it's picking up the lighting. So there's a recessed over the counter right here. I guess there's a sink right here. It looks like maybe a window right here. So they're putting a nice little recess here, okay? And then you can see that they've got a three-way up here, right? So it looks like they're coming three-way. Three-way is coming over here for here, okay? There you go. And I don't know what this light is over here. I have no idea. These look like some recesses here and here. All right. And this looks like an exhaust fan or something that's in the kitchen. So this is on B25. So this is on this totally separate circuit. Okay. All right. So it looks like, and I don't know where this goes. This is another three-way. Oh, somewhere else for this outdoor light here. Okay. So this may be over in the living room area. So here you got a deck you're walking out on. You've got a three-way here. Can turn this light on from here or somewhere else in the house. Okay. But you see where everything's getting powered from here. So power's coming in here, dropping a 2-wire here to bring power here, right? And dropping it here. And it looks like it's carrying over here. 2 wires bringing over here. 3-wire over here. Dropping it down. There you go. Right? And then there's your 3-way for here. Okay. Point is, all of this circuit is being done. All of this lighting is being done with B7. Okay. It's being done. So this is your kitchen lighting layout. We'll refer back to this layout as we go. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now, that's that layout. We'll go back when we need to. Okay. So prior to installing the wire, the electrician really has to consider the wishes of the homeowner. That is so true. Obviously, if it's a spec house, you're following the drawings and you're putting wherever everything's on it. If you're doing a custom home, and I used to do nothing but custom homes, the high dollar homes, because that's the only place that I saw that I made money. I did not make money doing the spec houses, the 2,200 square foot, 1,700, 1,800. I just couldn't make any money because that was about volume. You know, I signed a couple deals with some builders and thought it would pan out, and they weren't spec homes, but they were a little bit more than spec, but kind of spec, but a little bit higher end. And then he ended up going bankrupt and that type. So I ended up transitioning into just doing high-end homes. Now that's all my brother does right now. You know, he does multi-million-dollar homes. That's it. And he only does a couple a year, okay? Because they're so customized and there's so many things that the homeowners want. And that's his model. Of course, he's in his 60s now and he's winding his company down. But at the end of the day, that was his model. But he had to work with the homeowners. Okay, so prior to doing anything, you need to work with the homeowners. And other reasons that we need to work with the homeowners when we're running, before we even run our cables anywhere, is because we need to know if there's going to be crown molding or anything that we need to stay away from when we're routing our cables, right? Because the last thing you want is to put something up in the, going through some holes in the top and you know they're going to be putting long crown mold or something like that, or molding around the ceiling or chair moldings. And I just like to stay away from those things. So again, in a normal house, you probably don't have to worry about it. You know, you're going to drill the center of the stud. You're going to be more than an inch and a quarter from the edge of the board hole to the edge of the framing member. If not, you're going to use nail plates. I get it, but it's just something that I like to go in a house and look around and say, okay, where am I going to be routing everything? And I'm trying to stay away from trouble, right? I don't want nobody to pinch anything. I'd be honest with you. I try to stay away from the plumber's issues. I try to stay away from HVAC folks' issues. I try my best to look and route. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm going to run extra 25, 30 foot of cable just to get around somebody's problem. Okay. So, but I think of those things. In fact, I may have to use additional cable if I'm going to run through an LVL or a laminated beam or something that I'm like, I don't know if I should be drilling that. I need to reach out to the building official or the building inspector and say, hey, I need to run some cables over here. I don't really want to drill this beam. I might, if it's an engineered beam, I might reach out to the manufacturer of the beam. I might do that extra due diligence, or I might just work my way around it. Okay. I might look at the layout and say, well, you know, maybe I'm going to do everything from underneath. So instead of drilling around the sides through the studs, maybe it's just as easy to pop down and come and pop up somewhere else and just go down, over and up. And again, depending on what's underneath. So these are things that you probably take for granted because you do it every day and you don't think about the routing and you just do it. For me, I like to stay away from trouble. That was always one of my things. Now, obviously, the lighting arrangement should avoid shadows in work areas. Again, it's going to be highly dictated on where your customer wants their lighting anyway. And with custom homes, they'll tell you where they want it. If it's on a drawing, I just install it based on the drawing. Now, my brother is notorious for giving homeowners advice, even though something may be on the drawing. If he looks at something and goes, yeah, I've been doing this for 50 years. That is not a good location. And they may have a conversation and something gets moved. Okay. So again, I don't blindly go in just wiring these things up. Also, very prominent people want under cabinet lighting. Okay. And they want to put in fluorescent stripping or LED lighting underneath the cabinet. So it's important to understand the cabinet. It's important to understand the cabinet layout. I can tell you right now that there are standardized cabinet sizes and heights, right? And overhangs and cabinets that come down. But you're going to have to work with your customer in your layout because you want to make sure that that cable comes out at the right location, right? We don't want it down below the cabinet. Then you're going to have to be doing some patching and crap like that. And I don't want it to be behind the cabinet. Then I can't get to it. I'm going to end up having to cut some cabinets, a back out of It's all about making sure now, once you as an electrician determine the cabinet layout or ask the builder for a cabinet layout in the kitchen so that you, one, make sure you're laying everything right. Okay, it's important. But two, making sure that if you have anything that's got to poke out for under cabinet lighting or above cabinet lighting, okay, maybe you're going to have some accent lighting above a cabinet, that type of thing. You need to make sure you're looking at all those drawings or at least asking for them. That way, you say, well, Paul, I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't need that. I know where everything goes. Okay, that's you. You do you. But me, even after years that I did it, I always asked for cabinet layouts. And I made sure that everybody was on the same page because I don't do shit for free. Okay? I did it once. I want to make sure I did it once and I was done. I don't get paid to come back and have to patch stuff or do it again. And I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I was notorious for having a layout of the cabinets, looking at the homeowner, looking at the builder, if that's all I had access to, and saying, okay, I'm coming out here and I'm going to be poking out here and it's based on this drawing. Okay, you agree, right? And it was not below me to have the builder sign the drawing where we made all the marks, that type of thing. In a lot of homes I didn't have under camera lighting, so it didn't matter. But those are the little things tips that maybe it makes your life a little bit easier if you get those things up front when you're doing your walk around with your customer or your walk around. Make sure you ask for things like cabinet layouts and things like that. Also, just as a tip for those is to make sure that you also up front as early as possible can get an appliance list so that you know exactly what's going to be in that kitchen. Now, if you're doing a load calculation and you're using a worst case scenario, okay, that's tough because you really should know what's going in there to do an accurate load calc. And you might say, yeah, Paul, that's in a perfect world, that's easy, but most of the homes I deal with, they don't even know what's going in there. Well, how the hell do you do a load calc if you don't know? Really? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know you do it, but how do you really do a load calc if you don't know what the hell's in the house? Really? I just made them. I pestered them until I knew exactly what was going in. Now, there's some generic stuff that I can go with garbage disposer and know that I'm going to be okay and things like that, the generic stuff. But you really need to know these things in order to do an accurate load calculation. All right. Now, let's see here. So under cabinet, there could be strip fluorescent, could be LEDs, could have to install drivers somewhere for the LEDs. So all these things have to be thought of. Let's see here. A good color rendition of a kitchen area is achieved by using different lamps. LEDs provide a number of choices. Again, they come in cools and warms and whatever. I'm going to give you advice on that. Make sure that you are on the same page if you're providing the lighting. Okay, there is a big difference in the feel of a kitchen if you're the one that's providing the LEDs, like the trims and the final product for them. You're just like, ooh, I want 6 recesses in this kitchen. Okay, do you want cool white? Do you want warm white? What do you want? Because it can make a huge difference to what their expectations are. I like the cool white. Everything is bright, kind of a bluish tinge, cool white. Some people like the warm. It's kind of reminiscent of an incandescent. I don't like that. I like the cool. I like the bright. Okay, that type of things. In white kitchens, I like bright white, the bright lumens. I'm not a big fan of anything that replicates an incandescent or a warm. I'm just not. That's just me. But again, these are things you want to make sure you talk with your customer about because they may not have the same expectation scenario, okay? And in a lot of these, you can show them the colors of what the light rendition, all right, this LED is going to be like this, or this fluorescence like this. This is what warm, this is what cool looks like, these different, and they will say, okay, I'm okay with this. And then everybody's on the same page. Then you're good to go, okay? So just be careful of that. All right, as far as placement, again, when you're talking about under the cabinet, here you see here, this is like strip lighting can be mounted this way, right? There is some that have a little pocket that you would put a fluorescent up into. Obviously, you're going to know this, but you do need to know based on where you're going to bring out your cables and what you're going to do. Those type of things. Because if you bring your cables in the back of a cabinet, then you're going to have an AHJ that's saying, well, you got cables that are coming out in the back of the cabinet that are coming into the cabinet, then I need to protect these, whether it's a false bottom or something, then you run into that extra expense. So it's important to figure out where I'm going to be coming out at. And again, you ought to be, if they're following the rules and they're putting the cabinets where they should and they're following the drawings, which can change, by the way. I have a situation now, my brother did, where they decided to change their cabinet layout without telling him, that type of thing. So that can be a problem. But at least he had the original drawing to say, hey, look, this is what we agreed to. And so they're going to pay the extra to fix it, that type of thing. So again, here, then you know where to bring things in. And again, it's another example here of where you might have a false bottom right here and you have the strip lighting towards the front of the cabinet, that type of thing, rather than the back of the cabinet. Might be in the front that casts the light, okay? Important for you to know those things, all right? Okay, so let's now move on. We're still in that kitchen, okay? What about a hood, fan, microwave, oven outlet? So this receptacle that's going to be put in, or maybe it's a hardwire, okay? It says ducted fans exhaust air to the outside. They remove cooking odors, steam, and smoke. The ductless fans remove cooking odor. That's it. They do not remove steam. They do not remove smoke. They typically have some kind of like a charcoal filter, and it's trying to remove the smells or the odors from whatever's cooking. It doesn't remove the steam, doesn't remove the smoke, but it can remove the odors. Okay, now, NEC 422.16b4 code reference. Okay, and we can go look at that in the code. It says permits a range hood and microwave oven range hood combination to be cord and plug connected. Okay, so these would be, for example, you buy them and they're all in one assembly. Okay, and it has the bottom of it has the vent, and then you have the microwave oven. Okay, that's already built in, and it has a built-in exhausting component that exhausts it to the outside. Okay. All right, so that case installed inside the cabinetry above the range, so it's usually a built-in, and it installs on an individual branch circuit, that type of thing, okay? Not to be on with the small appliance branch circuit, okay? Very specific what can be on the small appliance branch circuit, but this will not. This will have its own, and typically those will come with instructions from the manufacturer that'll require it to have an individual branch circuit. Now, they might call it a dedicated branch circuit, but in the NEC, we call it an individual branch circuit, okay? And that is all it's going to power is that, okay? And it is allowed to be cord and plug, but it could be hardwired, okay? This gives you the permission to be cord and plug. All right, so NEC defines an individual branch circuit as a branch circuit that supplies only one utilization equipment. Installing it in a manner that could have more than one utilization equipment installed in it creates a problem, okay? So what does it say under 210.21b1 for an individual branch circuit? It says 210.21b1 says requires that a single receptacle supplied by an individual branch circuit have an ampere rating not less than that rating of the branch circuit, not less than, okay? So that means if receptacle is rated 20 amps, then it's to be used on a 20 amp branch circuit, okay? So the individual branch circuit itself, 20 amp, okay? has to have a receptacle that's rated at least the same as that branch circuit. Okay. What many people don't realize is that one example of a single receptacle was, say, a range receptacle. You can have a 50, okay? You could have a 50 amp range receptacle installed on a 40 amp branch circuit because it is equal to or greater than the rating of the branch circuit, as well as you could have a 40 installed on that branch circuit, okay? So even though it's a 50 amp rated overcurrent device, we have some allowances, for example, for like cooking appliances, then that would still be protected on the 40 amp branch circuit, okay? So the key here, if it's an individual single receptacle, okay, that is supplied by an individual branch circuit that has a rating that is what? So the rating of the receptacle has to be equal to or greater than the rating of the branch circuit, not less than the rating of the branch circuit. Makes sense? Okay. It says the fan motor and air movement through the exhaust fan produces a certain amount of noise. Exhaust fan manufacturers specify a sound level rating for their described in their literature. It really doesn't matter to me because I'm the electrician. I'm installing it. That's their choice. Whatever they buy, if they want a noisy ass exhaust fan that's built into the microwave, that's on them. I don't care. I'm just installing it, right? That's all I care about. Okay. Next, what about clock outlets? We don't see these anymore. Okay. So we can't put the microwave, the built-in microwave. Now, again, people ask me this question and say, well, what if they buy a countertop microwave? Well, that's an aftermarket. That's after I've installed. That's after I've wired everything. I don't give a damn what they put on their countertop. That's why we're going to have a minimum of 2 small appliance branch circuits serving a countertop. Okay. So at the end of the day, I don't care aftermarket what they put on their countertop. But if the microwave is built in and we're using a microwave that's going to be either hardwired or cord and plug, then it's going to have instructions to have its own individual branch circuit. I'm going to wire it as such. But it's not going to be on the small appliance branch circuits. Okay? Not going to be on that. All right. Where was I? All right. So, okay. So clock. I don't see these today. I don't know that anybody's seen these. These are typically a single receptacle that are recessed back that allow you to mount a clock on the wall. Back in the old days, an electric clock, I don't even know if they make them anymore for that. I don't even know. I have yet to see any clocks that have a cord and plug in them anymore. They're usually battery, that hang on the wall. I don't know. But the code would allow you to have a battery-operated wall and mantle clock, for the most part, have replaced those electric clocks. However, can be put almost anywhere, unlimited choices. But you can put a outlet up there and a single receptacle in one of those type of boxes that recess it. If you want to choose to put that clock outlet up there and you put a receptacle in it, then you could put that on the small appliance branch circuit. It is allowed to be added to it. No different than you're allowed to put a receptacle for the igniter for a gas range on the small appliance branch circuit. There's limitations with that. Okay, so I would able to do that. Now, clock hanging receptacles are still available. They sit back from the front edge of the faceplate, provide room for a typical small plug cap on the end of the cord. I guess they still make the receptacles. They're recessed back. I'm assuming they still make the clocks, but I have never seen one. So if you've seen one, let me know. But I've never seen one. Okay. All right. All right. Now, code. Let's talk code. So we have the small appliance branch circuits supplying receptacles in the kitchen. Now, here's the one thing to remember. When you run these small appliance branch circuits, okay, and you're required to have a minimum of 2, okay, at least 2, and we're supplying these branch circuits, you could have more than 2. It's fine. So I could have the 2 that's supplying my countertop, and then they also will supply the receptacles that go around the wall, the normal spacing, the 6 foot, 12 foot requirements. Those are for the wall. And then you have the ones that are on countertops that have to meet the 2 foot, 4 foot rule. Okay. But all of those receptacles in a kitchen are going to be supplied by those 20 amp small appliance branch circuits. And maybe because of the size of your kitchen, 2 of them is not enough. Okay, well, maybe you put 3 in there. or maybe you put 4 in there, okay? Totally up to you. But those are to supply the receptacles that are in the kitchen area, okay? Now, here's important code stuff. It says at least 2 20 amp small appliance brand circuits are required in the kitchen, okay? And you're going to see those rules in 210.11c, 1 for those requirements, okay? The minimum of 2. It says receptacle outlets in the dining room, breakfast rooms, or pantry are also required to be supplied by either of those small appliance brand circuits serving the kitchen, or both. Or they must have their own small appliance brand circuit installed. So again, somebody comes to me and says, hey, Paul, I'm going to install 2, the minimum required 2 in the kitchen, but I got a breakfast room over here, or I have a nook, or I have a dining room. Can I supply those rooms from that small appliance brand circuit, any one of them? Yes. Could I install a separate third small appliance brand circuit to pick up the dining room? Yes, I could. Now, you can have any number. 2 is the minimum, okay? Now, in those small appliance circuits, when it comes to the load calculation for those, when you're doing a load calc, each one of those small appliance brand circuits that you're adding are going to be 1500 VA, okay? Each in your load calc. Now, granted, you're going to be able to apply that to the demand factors in 220.45 if you're in the 2023 edition. You'll be able to apply them, but just remember, okay, that I am going to be, every small appliance brand circuit that I add is going to be 1500 VA for each one of them, okay? All right. Now, the countertop receptacles must be supplied by at least 2 small appliance circuits. So when it comes to your countertops, I have to make sure that my 2 small appliance, the minimum I'm required, has to supply all of my countertops. Now, people get confused with this. So if I have 2 countertops, and let's say I have a sink in the middle. So I have a countertop over here. Let me get to the full screen because let me do this visual. And I have a countertop over here and I have a countertop over here. Okay. As long as one of the small appliance brand circuits supplies the countertop on the left and the other one supplies the countertop on the right, I've met the rule. My minimum of 2 supplies my countertops. Now, could I have the one of the small appliance brand circuit supply 3 of them over here and then maybe 1 over here and then the other small appliance does the rest of them over here? Yes, you can intermix it. The goal here is that at least the 2 small appliances, at least 2, has to supply the countertop receptacles. Now, can I have a third one? Yes. So I could have 1 for this counter. I could have 1 for this counter. But I also, let's say, have an island. Then I could have a third one supply the island if I want. But nobody's going to do that. Typically, you're just going to go from your countertop and loop over to do an island. Now, again, depending on what code cycle you're in, if you're in the 2023 edition, okay, then you can put it over on the island. You can put a junction box and leave it and don't do anything with it. Okay, you know what my feeling is on that. But if you're in the 2020 or 2017 and you have rules for, depending on the size of the island or peninsula, that you would install receptacles there. But in the 2023, it's totally optional to do that. But you still have to put the provisions there. Okay, or have the ability to get it there later, like an unfinished basement where you could just go up from the bottom, or a raceway over there that's empty that you could pull a cable in later. You got to have some type of provision there. But at the end of the day, it can be supplied by one of the small appliance brand circuit in there because chances are you're not going to run a separate one just for an island or a peninsula. Make sense? That type of thing. Now, one of the things to remember here is that when we go back to the code here, notice that it says right here, when it says countertop receptacles must be supplied by at least 2. You can't have more than 1. It says all counter receptacles must be GFCI protected. And we're going to look at something in the code here in a minute. Okay. Let's see here. What is David saying? If you run a third circuit that keeps K, keeps K? That feeds K, what? I mean, I gotta look at this again, David, because it's if you run a third circuit that feeds kitchen, I guess Is it the dining room and no countertops? This would require GFCI protection. Okay, we're going to see the requirements here in a second. So as you can see, I'm going to go look at 210.8 for those requirements. Okay, typo. Okay, all right. So let's start off with the main premise. So one thing we know, that all countertop receptacles must be GFCI protected. That we know first. Okay. And we know that the small appliance brand circuits are required to be AFCI protected. We know that, what we saw earlier, okay? And we're not permitted to serve the lighting or appliances such as dishwashers, waste disposer, garbage disposer, instant water heaters, or exhaust fans. We know that those cannot be supplied by the small appliance brand circuits. We get it, right? We got all that, okay? Now, back to our diagram before we'll go look at the code, okay? And I'll bring this up a little bit so we can see a little bit of it, okay? All right, so here is, let's see. So here is the other receptacles in the kitchen, okay? So they meet the spacing requirements, 6 foot, 12 foot, yada, yada, yada. And this looks like this is a dedicated, I don't know what this is. But anyway, here we go. So we got our receptacles all spaced around. Let's see here. A is for AFCI protection. So there's AFCI protection. Got it, got it, got it. G is for GFCI protection. Guess what? These aren't on the countertop, but they also require GFCI protection. Now here's our island. Okay. And you'll notice that this is A for AFCI protection. There you go. And here it just looped it over from the countertop over to pick up this island. Right, and because this is broken in half again, in the older code section, if this had a cooktop that broke it in half and it was 12 by 24, then these would each require their own separate receptacle. That was 2017. In 2020, it ended up being broken into the first 9 square feet requires a receptacle, and then every 18 square feet thereafter required an additional one, until where we got to the 2023 where none of this is required anyway. Now, of course, this is an igniter right here that is probably being brought over here for this gas cooktop, maybe. I don't know. We're just assuming, but we're throwing it all out there, okay? All right, so now let's go real quickly. Hold on a second. Let me get this back. Okay. Yeah, before I get into that, let's go over to real quick to answer your question on the NEC. And we're going to go to 210.8 because I did have a question on that. All right, so 210.8, scroll it down to answer that question. All right, so here we're at GFCI requirements. Okay, Class A, GFCI, provided with provisions for 210.8A through F. We're only focusing on A, the dwelling unit. Notice it says all 125 volt through 250 volts, okay, installed in the following locations, all right, and supplied by single phase branch circuits rated 150 volts or less to ground shall be ground fault circuit interrupter protected. Okay, so let's get down here. Here's a kitchen. All right. So what's interesting here, okay, is that you'll notice that I don't see any reference down here, okay, any reference down here to dining room, okay? So the GFCI protection is for the kitchen. Now by proxy, okay, depending on how you run your circuits, right, that it may be GFCI protected in the dining room because you're just dropping it off of a GFCI protected circuit that's in the kitchen. And that's okay. You can have more, you can put everything on GFCI if you want, right? That's up to you. Okay, so by proxy, it may be GFCI protected. But there is nothing in that requires GFCI protection yet in the dining room. Okay, so if you look at the list, you'll see that it just says kitchens. Well, the dining room is not a kitchen. Okay, we have a definition of what a kitchen is. Now, areas with sinks. So maybe you have a dining room with a prep sink. But it says, and permanent provisions for food preparation, beverage preparation, or cooking. So maybe you have this area in the dining room with the sink, maybe it's a wet bar, and it does have provisions there for food preparation or even beverage preparation. That's going to be an AHJ call. Then if that's the case, then it would kick in the GFCI requirements. Or maybe you have a sink in there, and maybe those receptacles in your dining room are within 6 feet of the top inside edge of the bowl of that sink. Then it may kick in a requirement for that protection. Okay, but in general, it would not be required in your dining room. That type of thing. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see here. Brandon says, I thought you could no longer have receptacle outlets on the side of an island. You didn't listen, Brandon. In the 2023, that is, you're not required to bring them there at all. Okay. And so it also removed the ability to install it. If you do install one, you remove the ability to install it on the side. Okay. But 2020 NEC in 2017, as I said, depending on the cycle you're on, then they still have the provisions to be able to install it on the side as long as you're not under an overhang more than 6 inches and not below 12 inches, then you do have that provision. It's still there. In the 2023, it's gone. Now, 2026, it's going to bring back a provision for you to be able to install it in the front of a drawer. Why the hell we'd want to do that? And that even's worse because now you're taking away the application. Yeah, well, the one that you see on the screen doesn't tell you that it could be a pop-up. It could be on the countertop, right? It could be. So this is just giving you a depiction. That's all. That type of scenario. That's all it's trying to do is give you a depiction. Okay. In the 2023, I could run the power there and just put it in a junction box and keep it underneath the counter. And we don't have a provision to put it on the side anymore, right? But maybe this is depicting it being mounted on it in a tombstone. Or maybe this is depicting it being mounted in one of those that pop up from the counter or something like that. Could be, okay? That type of thing, okay? Yeah. If you go read what it says, Jonathan, in the 2026, people argued that they didn't want it on the side of their fancy counters, and now they literally think that it can be okay to be in a drawer. That typically, now you're taking away the drawer. That goes against everything that everybody that argued about removing them from the island. It's stupid. I don't understand. And it is nothing in the provision to say, does the drawer have to be fixed in place? Can it move in and out? Do I have to secure the cables? Do I have to use a flexible type of wiring method? No direction. It's going to make it worse. And now it's going to take us 2 damn cycles to fix it. Don't get me started. I don't understand it. Okay. So anyway, yes, so you'll notice that all these receptacles have to be GFCI protected, right? And you'll also notice that they have to be AFCI protected. All of these, okay, in here. All AFCI and GFCI protected under the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code. All right, now let's talk about the installer that says, okay, Paul, what did you tell me about the receptacle? I have a choice to install a separate receptacle or an individual brand circuit just for my refrigerator. Okay, well, refrigerator receptacles, several NEC requirements, and you get what's called special permissions. Equipment that is listed and labeled shall be installed and used in accordance with any instructions included in the listing and labeling. Okay, so when it comes to refrigerators, for example, what does the code say that I can do when it comes to a refrigerator? All right, so let's go look at the code real quick. I'll bring up this version as it's a little easier for us to look at. So let's look at 210. First of all, let's just real quickly drop at 210.11, okay? And we're talking about the small appliance, right? So this is our small appliance brand circuit required to have 2 or more, okay? And they are to supply the receptacles that are described in 210.52b, right? So I'm going to click 210.52b, all right? So those small appliance branch circuits, okay, is for use in the receptacles that are in the kitchen, pantry, breakfast room, dining room, or similar areas. That's a catch-all phrase if it's used similarly to a kitchen, if it used similarly to a pantry, a breakfast room, a dining room, or similar of a dwelling unit, it says those 2 or more small appliance branch circuits served required by 210.11c1, which is what we just looked at. That's the minimum of 2. You can have more than 2, but you have a minimum of 2. Shall serve all wall and floor receptacle outlets covered in 210.52a. So remember, that's why we're using those same small appliance branch circuits to do the receptacles around the walls in the kitchen as well, and the walls in the dining room as well, and the wall receptacles or floor receptacles in the pantry as well, right? Covering all those, okay? And then it also says, comma, all countertop outlets covered by 210.52c, right? And this is where people miss this, and receptacle outlets for refrigeration equipment. So that rule typically tells you that the refrigerator receptacle goes on the small appliance branch circuits, right? And if you stopped right there, you'd be like, cool. I'm going to just supply everything with it, right? Okay. Well, then you have allowances down here. You have exceptions, okay? So look at exception number 2. Exception number 2 says, in addition to the required receptacle specified in 210.52, okay, so that's our 6 foot, 12 foot, that's our 2 foot, 4 foot, all those normal receptacles we got to have, right? It says a receptacle outlet to serve a specific appliance shall be permitted to be supplied from an individual branch circuit rated 15 amps or greater. Why is this significant? Well, because we've been doing this for freaking ever, right? We don't go to the garbage disposer with that small appliance branch circuit. We always run a separate branch circuit. We do the same thing for the dishwasher. Well, we're allowed to do the same thing for the refrigerator. So if I want to put a individual branch circuit to the refrigerator in the dwelling, and it be a 15 amp circuit, that is okay. Perfectly fine. Now remember, all receptacles that are in the kitchen still have to be GFCI protected. Didn't get away from that. All receptacles in the kitchen have to be AFCI protected if it's a 120 volt branch circuit. Didn't get away from that. Okay, that type of scenario. But you're allowed to do so. Now, interesting is you have some commentary that kind of goes over some of those things, right? Just kind of talks about all these little things. And I'm just see if it shows example. All right, this is probably better for me to go full screen on this one. So let's go on and go real quick there. I will go full screen, and hopefully it has that same drawing on full screen. Let's see here. I don't know that it will. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yes, it will. There we go. A little bit better to see it. Here, let me go to full screen for you guys. All right. So typically sub-zeros, because of the amps that it pulls, typically they're going to require a dedicated circuit anyway. And that's usually in the instructions for the sub-zero. They're going to typically require to have their own individual branch circuit. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions, okay? All right, so here is our layout, one layout right here. So here's our small appliance branch circuits home runs right here. So here's the dining room. Notice it's going to hit this one, right? And hit this one, right? Notice something, right? Notice something that it is not, if you look at the here, it's not GFCI protected. Notice this, because it's in the dining room. Notice this is in the pantry. It's not in the kitchen. Still on that one of the small appliance branch circuits, right? But it is not GFCI protected. Doesn't have to be, okay? Notice this. So here's the other one right here. So this one, small appliance home run, goes to here, and it's doing the gas igniter. That is allowance, okay? You're allowed to hit the igniter as well as a clock type receptacle, okay? But anyway, you notice that it's still got to be GFCI protected. Then it hits this countertop, right? Then it hits this countertop. And then over here, it hits a clock receptacle. I don't know that we have those anymore, but there you go. Right there, clock receptacle. And it's GFCI protected. And here, so this one branch circuit serves this countertop. And then you have your third one right here This is picking up one in the dining room. Then it pops in and picks up this one here in the kitchen, which then is GFCI protected. Okay. And then it goes from here. Now, probably would put the GFCI device here, right? But I could put it back at the panel and everything would be GFCI. It doesn't matter if this is GFCI protected or not, but it's not required to be. But this is, so maybe I'm putting a GFCI receptacle here, and in the load side, I come out and hit here, okay? But if that's the case, then this would be GFCI protected, if that is how the layout goes. It's totally up to you how you want to do it, but these are required to be GFCI protected, okay? All right, so, and then you see here's the 15 or 20 amp general lighting circuit. It comes in here. All right, now see here, this receptacle right here. This one, this receptacle might be right here, is within 6 feet, right? So that one is the one that's required to meet 210.52 spacing requirements, okay? This is an additional one that's put in, right? And it can be on what? A 15 amp branch circuit. Nothing says that I can't have additional ones there. As long as I meet the requirement for the number of 20 amp small appliances, nothing says that I can't have additional receptacles in there, okay? You get me? You follow me? Okay, so now let's look at this one. All right, here's another example. So here is my 20 amp small appliance coming in right here, hitting this one, jump into here, jump into here, jump into here, jump into here, jump into here. That's one small appliance branch circuit. Boom, you notice it jumps out to here. And this is where my GFCI may be installed right here. And then it goes on the load side, comes up to here, boom. GFCI protected, hit my countertop. So that one circuit is serving, that one 20 amp circuit serving a countertop. And then you've got your second one right here coming in. This one goes over to here, here. Maybe I'm putting the GFCI here, or maybe in this case, it's a breaker GFCI. I don't know, don't care. And then it's going from here to here, here, here. All of these, so this one circuit, 20 amp serving the countertop. This other 20 amps serving the countertop. So I got the minimum of 2 serving the countertop, right? And then what happens, I've got just simply, that's it. All I've got is 2 20 amps. And then I have my general purpose branch circuit coming in, hitting a receptacle. Maybe it's an additional one that's not required because maybe this one is obviously within 6 feet, okay? And then, of course, I'm hitting the lighting, okay? So I'm covering all of my lighting. And then maybe this one right here, there's your refrigerator. And it's being installed with a separate 15 amp or 20 individual. That's perfectly fine, okay? It still has to be GFCI protected, and no, you're not going to put the GFCI device behind the refrigerator because GFCI devices are required to be readily accessible. So you wouldn't put it back here. So this means it's going to be right here. It's a GFCI breaker protected, that type of scenario. Other thing I will point out here is, see this receptacle right here and see this circuit right here, this one right here? This is not a small appliance branch circuit. Okay, so you do not have to add an additional 1500 VA for that individual branch circuit to that refrigerator. It's already covered in the 3 VA per square foot. Already done, that type of thing. Now, one of the questions came up and said, well, what if I'm installing a Sub-Zero with a nameplate that's going to have a significant amount of amps? Well, then that is an appliance that you have to take into consideration, and you will add that to your appliance list because you do have to account for the load. But a standard individual branch circuit that's being run for a standard refrigerator, I would not add any additional VA. I would say that it'd be absorbed into 3 VA per square foot, okay? Let's see here. What do we got here? Some questions people are asking, and I am running out of time with today's episode, but let's see here if I can answer some questions. Does the fridge need GFCI? Yes, if it's in the kitchen, it does. Let's see. My refrigerator's been on GFCI. I've installed them for years. GFCIs don't trip like that. If the GFCI trips, there's something wrong with the refrigerator or something else is going on. If you're really worried about it, get a GFCI with an audible alarm on it. But again, this is not new. And if the refrigerator was within 6 feet of a sink anyway, it was always required to be GFCI protected on that receptacle, that type of scenario. But now if it's in the kitchen, so I don't see the nuisance tripping and I don't see problems with it. And again, it's about safety. We don't care about the food. Food can be replaced. It's about the safety. And I don't see nuisance tripping of GFCIs if it's done right. I don't see it. And I've been doing this a long time. Okay. So let's see here. Samantha says, is it specified AFCI or GFCI for kitchen? I'm not sure what you mean. So if it's a receptacle and it's being installed in a kitchen, it is 125 through 250 volt receptacle, got to be GFCI protected. If a receptacle, again, y'all are reading way too much into this. What did the code say? If it's a receptacle, 210.8a, if it's a receptacle, it's 125 through 250. If it's installed in a kitchen, it has to be GFCI protected, period. No exception for a microwave. No exception for any of that, period. It says all receptacles installed in a kitchen. And I'm in the 2023 NEC, okay? That's what it says, all right? Let's see here. Where are we at? Make sure I cover that. I want to cover all your questions here. Let's see. David says, this is where my question stemmed from. Would the dining room need GFCI protection due to the wording? No, the GFCI would not be needed in the dining room, okay, at all, because it says 210.8a says kitchens. It's not about the circuit. It's about the location, the kitchens. The dining room is not a kitchen, that type of thing. Okay, so no, would not be required. And those images that I showed you came straight from the handbook, right? And you don't see any GFCI signal on here. This is the pantry. This is the dining room. Notice the circuit does continue over into the kitchen. Because this receptacle is in the kitchen, that's where GFCI kicks in. Okay, makes sense? Okay, where are we at? Let's see here. How about a Sub-Zero? I added that. If it's a dedicated piece of equipment, you have to account for it. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Charlie says, is that just for the required outlet, or am I not allowed at all to install it under a counter? Charlie, are you talking about the island? If you're talking about the island in the 2023, you have to install the receptacles on or above the countertop. On or above. Cannot be below anymore. Can't be under an overhang. Can't be on the side. Can't be anywhere below it. Okay. Can I install additional receptacles, let's say, down low? Yes. As long as they're to serve, let's say, the space. They're not to serve the countertop. So that's where people will say, well, isn't there a loophole around this? Yes, and that's my whole point with the code is that, okay, well, I could put one down low that's to serve the space versus one, I'm not putting it there to serve the countertop. I'm not putting it there to serve the island. I'm putting it there to serve the space. And then you have to have that discussion, right, with the AHJ, okay? Garbage disposal, absolutely. If it's a receptacle in the kitchen, GFCI protection's required. Absolutely. Absolutely, Frank. If you want to get around that, hardwire it. That type of thing. Because 210.8a is about receptacles. That type of thing. Let's see. What else? Now, what list of items are required to be GFCI protected that are, for example, not receptacles? Or receptacles or hardwired, then we have to look at the NEC for that. Just by the way, since we're there, might as well go look. So the first place that you would see that first, just so you can get a grip of where we're at, is under 210.8. We would go down and we will be looking at specific appliances. So there are specific appliances that whether they're hardwired or supplied by cord and plug are going to require GFCI protection. And they are, again, this is more commercial, automotive vacuum machines, okay, drinking water coolers, they high pressure, that's, tire inflation, vending machines, sump pumps, yes, Whether it's in the basement or whether there's a sump pump, whether you say, well, that doesn't make sense. What if the GFCI trips and my house floods? It's a lot better than getting electrocuted by stepping in water. So again, you know, you may not like it, but my house that I grew up in used to flood all the time. Okay. And it's still standing today after nearly 80 years. And so again, the little water getting in is not going to hurt anything. But you getting electrocuted because you go down there and there's a problem with the cord on one of these sump pumps, then that, or a malfunction of the sump pump, then that's different. So again, people worry too much about what about the water? I'm not worried about the water. I'm worried about getting electrocuted. That's all the code cares about. Dishwashers, again, dishwashers, it used to be residential only, and then it changed. And so now it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter whether it's cord and plug or hardwired. Dishwashers, look at this. Electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, clothes dryers, and microwave ovens. Okay, and again, hardwired or cord and plug require GFCI protection in the 2023 edition of the NEC. Okay, now, when it comes to the generic 210.8, right here, under A, this is important. What does that say? It says all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacle installed in the following locations. All. Any of those that are installed in the kitchen are going to require, if this is the receptacle that you're installing on a receptacle, everything requires GFCI protection. Okay? Everything. Right? Now you do have some exceptions down here, okay, for this, right? But again, these really have nothing to do with what we're talking about. Oh, the only other interesting one is this one, this exception right here. Factory installed receptacles that are not readily accessible and are mounted internally to a bathroom exhaust fan assembly shall not require GFCI protection unless required by the installation instructions. That is a funny one. That's the one in a bathroom, for example, where you have the exhaust fan and it has that little two-prong receptacle in it that you plug the exhaust fan into it. It's still a receptacle, and it was in a bathroom, and then the code required that all receptacles in a bathroom be GFCI protected. Did that include that one? Well, yeah, up until we now have an exception, it did. And so in that scenario is, now, you know, look, that's on with the lighting circuit. I don't need to worry about it. Now, could you put it on GFCI? Yeah, you could if you want, but you're not required. That's that little receptacle that's built into the exhaust fan, let's say in a bathroom, okay? All right, makes sense? Okay, let's get back to the lesson here. I'm trying to answer all your questions, okay? Trying, okay? Let's see here. Keep them coming. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Let's see, Jonathan said, David, what if the dining in the kitchen on the E big room? I'm sorry, I'm not sure, Jonathan. I don't read, I don't do abbreviations well. It's not about the circuit. It's where its receptacle's at when it comes to that GFCI protection requirement. Or if it's a specific appliance that requires it. I don't do well with abbreviations, guys. I'm sorry. Sorry, I was a few minutes behind. I was referring to the island. Charlie, let's see here. It says, so I assume this is what you mean. It was just for required outlets, or I'm not allowed to install it under the counter. Yes, for the islands. Now, can I put a receptacle underneath inside of the cabinet? Sure. Right? That's fine. It's not serving the countertop. And the code says I could have additional receptacles in there. That's an additional one. It's not there to meet the spacing requirement. It's just an additional one you want to put. And that's an example of, can I put a receptacle over top of my cabinets to plug in some, let's say, a driver and put in some over-counter? Like, can I put a receptacle up high? Absolutely I can. I can put receptacles anywhere I want. Just have to remember that they may not be there to meet the spacing requirements. They're in addition to the requirements. I can put them anywhere I want. But if it's in the kitchen, then they all have to be GFCI protected. You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? Let's see here. Francis says, does the fridge need to be GFCI protected? Yes, if the receptacle is in the kitchen, then it has to be GFCI protected. We don't care about the food. Food doesn't matter. If disposal is not allowed, if the disposer is not allowed from the two small appliances, no, it's not allowed to be on there. The only things that can be on there is things that are serving the receptacles that serve the countertop and the wall spacing requirement. You're not only things that are allowed to be on the small appliance branch circuit is a receptacle that would ignite a gas range. That's specifically permitted, right? And I can put a clock receptacle on the small appliance. That's it. Nothing else can be on that small appliance branch circuit, okay? Except the refrigerator is required to be on it unless you use the exception. An exception allow you to run an individual branch circuit to not just the refrigerator, but it allows me, that rule allows me to run an individual branch circuit, which I always could do anyway, to a garbage disposal, to a dishwasher, to a microwave, all those type of things. All we did with the code was make it a little simpler to understand, something that you all do anyway or you've been doing for years, okay? Brandon says, isn't there a code maximum for how many devices a branch circuit can protect? No, so as far as the National Electrical Code for residential, you could put 1,000 receptacles on a branch circuit if you want. It's not, the code requires it to be evenly distributed, but there is no maximum. We don't use 180 VA for receptacles in dwellings. You just basically, there's rule of thumbs that people use, and that is using the rule of thumb is once we know what the wattage is, so we take 120 volts times 15 amps or 120 volts times 20 amps, that gives us a wattage. We take that wattage, right? Then we can use that and divide it by 180 VA, which the VA is synonymous with watts, and that gives us a rule of thumb for the number of receptacles that we should have. But remember, we can have lighting and we can have receptacles on a general purpose branch circuit. But on a small appliance branch circuit, we can only have receptacle outlets, that type of thing, right? So you got to have at least the two small appliances. But does the code say how many? No, the code doesn't necessarily, when it comes to residential, tell you how many receptacles you can put on that circuit, that type of thing. Now, you could have some manufacturers of GFCIs that may publish something in their documents, right, that may give a maximum number of GFCIs that are going to be put in on a circuit, that type of thing, or how many receptacles you can have that a GFCI device can protect. I don't see that. I don't worry about that. I don't know of anybody that's ever come into a real situation with that. So I couldn't speak to that. I've never had it ever be an issue with that type thing. All right, where are we at? Do we have other questions? Let's see here. How about putting an outside receptacle on the dining room circuit if the circuit only serves the dining room? No, it's a small appliance branch circuit. Just because it's serving the dining room, it's still a small appliance branch circuit. And it can supply no other loads except for those small appliance branch circuits in all the circuits. Just because it's not in a kitchen, because it's in that list, dining room, pantry, no, those type of things, and it's going to be a small appliance branch circuit. It can only serve those loads. It can't pop out of the dining room to do an outside receptacle. A garage could do that because you give that specific provision, but that circuit has to stay with the dining room. Now, can it go from the dining room and feed the pantry? Absolutely. Do that, but it can't go to an outside receptacle because that pantry is part of the list that can be supplied from a small appliance branch circuit. Does that make sense? Let's see here. Good questions. Microwave is not in the list that can be supplied by a small appliance branch circuit. Okay. Now, if you have a countertop one that the homeowner puts on after, then who cares? It's still going to be on the small appliance branch circuit. That's why we're required to have two that serve the countertop, and that's why it's 20 amps, right? Minimum of 20 amps. For those countertop that you sit on the, but we as electricians don't design for that. We don't know what kind of countertop microwave they're going to use. This rule is for when they're going to be putting one in that physically permanently mounts in a cabinet or bolts to the cabinet. Then we put in a receptacle for that. That cannot be on the small appliance branch circuit. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. Charlie says, besides the required outlets, can we add outlets anywhere? Yes, you can add additional ones if you want. Okay. Let's say base molding outlet on an island. No, there's the thing. This is where you're going to get into it. And I know what y'all are trying to do. Okay. I get what you're trying to do. you're supposed to be on that people that say we don't need receptacles on the island because it's unsafe. It's a hazard. People could put cords and pull things off and hurt little babies. I mean, that's what we're trying to say. But right now, if I would say that if you put a receptacle on an island or peninsula down low, then it would either have to be considered a wall divider, so it separates a room. Then you have to meet the spacing requirements, and then I would have one there. A cabinet that you simply put a countertop is not a room divider. It's not a wall space. It's just a cabinet. Okay, so depends on what you're talking about when it comes to an island, for example. If, for example, in my house, it's just a cabinet, and I have a granite on top of it. That is not a wall. That's not wall space. It's not a room divider. It's in the middle of the kitchen. It's not a room divider. So now, could I put a receptacle on it down low, say up 12 inches? Then I have to convince my AHJ that it's not there to serve the countertop. And the AHJ may be okay with it. The code's not the all the mean all. You still have to meet the AHJ. So I might say to the AHJ, I'm like, no. I put it down there because I'm putting it down to just to be an extra receptacle. And again, if it's underneath the counter where they pull seats up, the AHJ may or may not allow it. So the answer to that is you cap it off and you tell them that's the one that's there for the future. And then when he's done and he leaves, I'm not endorsing this, but you do whatever you feel you got to do. You know what I'm saying?
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
You can read between the lines on that one, right? Garbage disposer need GFCI? Absolutely, if it's a receptacle. If it's cord and plug, no. If it's a receptacle and you're plugging it in, yes, it's still a receptacle. Now, it used to be that the doors would break the cord measurement, okay, in 210.8, but they removed the door requirement. So now it doesn't break the measurement. So even if there are doors there, it's like the doors aren't there. You just measure through the doors. They removed that a cycle or so ago, okay? Used to be that the doors would stop that. And so, but they got rid of that, so it's not there anymore. Dishwasher, if you don't want a GFC, well, now you're required to GFCI the dishwasher, whether you hardwire it or it's a receptacle. Doesn't matter. Now, the other people ask me, can I put a receptacle device GFCI underneath the counter? First of all, it's got to be readily accessible. So my argument to that is it's readily accessible to most of you, but it would not be readily accessible to my wife or my mom, rest her soul, because they can't get down in there to reset it and test it. So you can't have the ability, it's when readily accessible means that I can't have to climb under or climb over to get to something to be able to actuate it. So I would argue that any GFCI receptacle under a counter is not readily accessible. Any GFCI receptacle behind a refrigerator is not readily accessible because you have to move something to get to it, okay? That type of thing. I'm answering a freaking lot of questions today. If you missed this episode, if somebody out there that missed this episode, you missed a lot of stuff we're talking about today, buddy. Ooh, y'all are chiming in. There you go. Let's see here. What else? Let's see here. Battles says, I was asking if dining room and kitchen was one big room. Does it all need GFCI? That's going to be an AHJ call, but typically what I would do with that is an AHJ or have been an AHJ. A lot of times there is this open transition. Then no, I would create what's called a line of demarcation. So again, you got to work with your AHJ, but typically if there was a big room where, and this is common, where the dining room just is one continuous expansion into the kitchen, then there's usually a line of demarcation. Means where the dining room starts and where the kitchen ends, right? And so again, I would say that the GFCI requirement would not carry into that dining room area, that line of demarcation. But you're going to have to verify that with your AHJ, because is it entirely possible that an AHJ could walk in there and go, I consider all of this a kitchen, right? So again, that's very, very unique. And that's a great question because as I tell electricians all the time, communicate. Don't be afraid to reach out to the AHJ. You know, that communication with them can maybe build a relationship with them and say, hey, I got a dining room that's connected to the kitchen. And this is very common for what? A living room connected to a kitchen. Okay, you have a living room, it overlooks the kitchen area, that type of thing. In my house, my kitchen and my dining room are all one, right? But there is a distinct line of demarcation between my dining room area and my kitchen area, okay? So if that's the case, now, would it hurt you to put it all on GFCI? No, it's not gonna hurt you, okay? And it may be just because you're using a breaker, it may be all on GFCI anyway, that type of thing. So it's not gonna hurt. And again, rapidly, we're getting to the point where almost everything, folks, is gonna be GFCI or AFCI protected. We're almost there, okay? I will tell you that in the 2026, you're gonna get a little bit of a break when it comes to that 210.8D, and it's now going to push it to 422.5, and you're going to see the range, hopefully, unless it gets killed in the NITMAM, you're going to see the ranges, you're going to see the microwave, you're going to see the cooktops and all that come off of that list. We'll see. But that's the way it sits right now. But yes, as David says, communication is key because you never know. My brother says this to me all the time. He says, why can't all the inspectors be the same? Unfortunately, they're not. They all have their own thoughts and beliefs. So again, what may be accepted here may not be here. Maybe they interpret it different. Communication is key. Don't be afraid to communicate with them. I'll be honest with you. On our website, we sell this little notebook, and it's got Code Nerd on it. I always used to carry a notebook with me because we did a lot of in different jurisdictions. I would write things down for different jurisdictions in that notebook and keep it. Like I would write what this jurisdiction requires, this jurisdiction, and just kind of keep it as a journal, a log. That's what I would do. Plus, I'd also write things down in there, little things that I wanted, notes. But I kept a journal, and it just called me anal, but I would say it's probably because of memory, because I have attention deficit disorder, and I jump around so much that I wanted to get back to my chain of thought. So I would write stuff down. So we make these journals that are available. They're cool. They got Code Nerd on them. They're available, and you can order them. They're pretty cool. And there's a neat little journal to make your notes in, that type of thing, okay? I'm not pushing the journals. You can go get it whatever you want, but they're pretty neat. I had Code Nerd on them, so that type of thing. So that type of thing. Now, they didn't say Code Nerd back in the day, but that's the thing. All right. Let's get back to the lesson real quick, see what we're at here. We got a few more we got to go to. All right, so additional considerations, countertops and work surfaces in kitchens. So it could be a countertop, but you could have a separate work surface in the kitchen. And remember that work surface also meets the countertop rules, okay? You have sliding doors in kitchens. That sliding door is going to break the wall space requirement except for the fixed portion. That didn't change, right? So if you have a sliding door that moves, there's a portion that is fixed and there's a portion that slides. That break in the wall space requirement only applies to the sliding portion, not to the fixed portion. Y'all know that fixed portion, okay? Small appliance branch circuit load calculations. Make sure you understand that it's 1500 VA for each small appliance branch circuit. Each additional circuit you run for a specific appliance, that's going to get calculated when you do your appliance calculation, not to get them confused. So here's your small appliance. Let's look at it real quick. I'll blow this thing up so you can see a little bit better. Here we go. All right, so here's your counter. So see this right here is kind of like dotted line. Okay, so this is not required to be installed, right? But you're going to put provisions over there for it, okay? However your provisions are, right? That's up to you, okay? I can tell you that the people cry. There was a reason that we put receptacles on islands and peninsulas for years. And then all of a sudden they don't want them anymore. Anyway. So there you go. So those are not required. Just make sure you have the ability to get something there. Maybe it's an unfinished basement. Maybe you put a raceway over here. And here it's a cabinet. So again, make sure you can get in here and get it over there. Maybe here you run the cable over here and put it in a junction box. or maybe you run a raceway over here, or maybe it's unfinished below it. I don't know. All of those would qualify for provisions. Here's our receptacles right here. So again, 2 feet from here, 2 feet from here, then you can go a maximum of 4 feet. That's your 2 foot, 4 foot rule, so that no point along this wall is more than 2 feet from a receptacle, right? Okay, that's your spacing stuff. Y'all know that. So there, and then here, and then we can go a maximum of 4 feet here. This is a break in the countertop, so I have to have receptacle within 2 feet of this break. So this one suffices, okay? So there, and then here's another one. As long as this one right here, this counter is at least 12 inches, then I have to have a receptacle there. So there it is right there, right? There you go. And then over here, we have, this is again, not to scale, but this over here, here is some other countertop space, right? This could be maybe a sit down area. Maybe this is just in the kitchen at a different height than the normal countertop, whatever. Maybe you sit down here, I don't know, but it's in the kitchen. So you put these receptacles here. Notice that all of this is AFCI protected and it is GFCI protected. You could do that at a circuit breaker if you use what's called a what? A dual function, not a combination, dual function. A dual function is going to cover AFCI and GFCI, where a combination is just covering two different types of arcs, a series arc and a parallel arc. So that's the difference between using the term combination versus a dual function. Okay? A dual function is going to do AFCI and GFCI protection to everything downstream. So you kill two birds with one stone. Now, could I have an AFCI device in the panel and then put a GFCI receptacle at the very first receptacle? Absolutely, I can. That is all okay because AFCIs and GFCIs work perfectly well together. There's no problem with them working together on the same circuit. That's a misconception, right? Now, you notice that this right here is actually, let's say, in a dining room. And you've got this a wet bar. Well, guess what? Here's the sink. And these are permanent provisions. So guess what? There you go. AFCI protected and GFCI protected. Boom, bada bing, right? There you go. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Let me go back down to my size. All right. Just a good summary of a good little old kitchen. Oh, interesting. So this right here, say this right here, over here was another room. Say over here was the dining room, okay? Now, this right here, this may or may not qualify as wall space. If this was just cabinets, then your argument could be that this is not wall space. However, an AHJ may consider this a room divider, dividing the dining room area, okay? I don't necessarily agree with that, right? But your AHJ could. So I would put a receptacle out here, right? And so this receptacle out here would not be installed to serve the peninsula counter, so your AHJ can't have a fit, but it may need to be out here based on 210.52a. So as long as I put it down lower, then it might serve as the wall space. Now, what if this right here was actually a wall? And in my cabinet, in McKinney, Texas, I had the counter just like this. And over here was my living room. This was a wall space because they framed up a 2x4 wall right here, which had a backsplash, right? And they put the cabinets up against it. Then there's no argument. That is a wall space. And if this is the living room or dining room, then this would count as wall space. And then I'd have to have a receptacle from the end, no more than 6 feet from the end, okay? And put a receptacle there. You get what I'm saying? It's this, you know, electrical requires us to think. And we have to communicate with the AHJs. I know some of you don't want to communicate with the AHJs, but, you know, one of the best traits that you can learn as an electrician or any trade is the art of communication. And the art of doing it without totally pissing somebody off. See, as you can tell, I'm still trying to master that. I haven't gotten there yet because I piss off a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I had a way that I talk with engineers. There's a way that I talk with other electricians in the field. I travel all over the country for a major manufacturer, and I'm kind of a pro at de-escalating situations. Okay? But when I'm on my forums or I'm able to chat with you and I can do what I want, then I'm as blunt as I can be because I just want to cut through the BS. But there is a way that you can be very tactful with dealing with AHJs. And if you know how to ask the question, it can help tailor the answer that you're looking for. Okay? I'm just saying, tactfulness can go a long way. All right? All right. Now, let's get back here. So we're back at the countertop here. So small appliance brand circuits for receptacles in a kitchen. So this is whether it's a range or whether it's a sink or counter-mounted oven, whatever it may be. You'll notice that there is a space behind this range, this cooktop or this sink, okay? There's a space back here. So we have little diagrams in the code, right? So it says space behind a range, counter-mounted cooking unit or sink is exempt from the wall line measurement. You know, the 2 foot, 4 foot measurement along the wall? It is exempt from that, from the outer footprint of the range or the sink, all the way back to the wall, okay? So this area, we'll just call this X, but there's some caveats to that, okay? It says, so as you can see here, is measured X in the drawing is less than 12 inches. The 24-inch measurement then begins at each side of the space. If this space behind it is more than 12 inches, okay, or 12 inches or more, I should say, is a better way to say it, then it is wall space. You will use it for something. Something will get put back there. Then you have to just do the 2 foot, 4 foot rule. You have to just treat it as countertop wall space. But if the space behind here is less than 12 inches, then it's kind of like a doorway in a sense. You stop your measurement here, and then you go 2 feet from the edge of this. 2 feet from the edge of this and start your 2 foot, 4 foot. You with me? That's what that means, okay? If this space right here is greater, or 12 inches or greater, then you just ignore that you have a range, a cooktop, or sink, and all you do is treat it as wall space. Does that make sense? Oh, and I also should tell you this also applies for one that's in a corner, so it's angled. So if it's in a corner, it's angled, kind of the same rule, but since they don't show this here, I will take you to the NEC so you can see it. Since they don't really show that there, and I do want to show that to you because there is a nifty little drawing in the NEC. So I'll take you there, all right? Just so we can take you there. Also, by the way, though, somebody asked earlier, no other outlets. Remember what he said about those small appliance brand circuits? It says, the 2 or more small appliance brand circuits in 210.52b1 shall have no other outlets. And that exception I was telling you about for the electric clock is right there. See that? Right? There's that one. And then, of course, you have this down here, which is for the lighting of like gas ranges, ovens, or counter-mounted cooking, that type of thing. Then they can be. So those were the 2 exceptions I was talking about. Other than that, no other outlets. And when I say no other outlets on those small appliances, it literally means no other outlets. No other lighting outlets, no other receptacle outlets, other than those that would be supplying a small appliance brand circuit load, okay? So I just wanted to quantify that before we moved on, all right? So now let's get to the kitchen requirement countertop. Let's show you. All right, so there's the one we just talked about right there. So see this right here? If this exempt, if it is what? Greater than 12 inches, okay? So if it's more than 12, then you get to this right here, okay? So the X is less than 12. Okay, so the space from the wall, if X is less than 12, then you get to ignore this space, okay? You just start from here and do it this way. If it's 12 inches or more, then you just treat it as wall space, and it may have a receptacle back here depending on your layout, right? Now this is the one I was talking about that may be on an angle. Same thing, footprint of whatever, range, counter-mounted cooking unit or sink, whatever. If it's in a corner, measure back, straight back to the wall, straight back to the wall. Now in this space here, this space is exempt from the wall if it is less than 18 inches, okay? If it is 18 inches or greater, then guess what? It's wall space. You will probably use it for something. I'm just saying. So anyway, these are nifty little diagrams that are in the NEC, okay? I call them pictograms, if you will, okay? So just wanted to make sure we looked at those before we moved on. Okay, now, Let's talk about split wire receptacles and multi-wire circuits. So people ask about these all the time. So a good example would be garbage disposer and a microwave, right? So a split wire receptacle has a top receptacle that is one circuit and a bottom receptacle on a different circuit. Now, this could be a 12-3, whereas a black is one circuit, the red is the other, and it's sharing a neutral. Per code, a multi-wire branch circuit is considered two circuits, right? Or it can be considered as one circuit, okay? So it does have the ability to be two separate circuits if you're gonna be sharing a neutral. And you gotta make sure that you install it right, okay? So it would be on a 2-pole breaker, or it'd be on 2 single-pole breakers with an identified handle tie that will connect the 2 single poles together so that they operate in tandem. That type of thing is all written in the code, right? But most of the time, if you're going to do a multi-wire branch circuit, you're probably just going to put it on a 2-pole breaker. And that ensures that the black is on one leg and the red is on the other, so that the neutral only sees the maximum imbalance between those two circuits. And the worst case it could ever see on a 20-amp circuit with a 2-pole breaker is the worst it could ever see on that neutral is 20 amps. Why? Because if 20 amps is being pulled on one leg and nothing is being pulled on the other, then the maximum imbalance is 20 amps on the neutral. If 20 amps is being pulled on leg A or the black and 20 amps is being pulled on the red, then the neutral is going to see what? 0. So when it says what's the maximum imbalance, it's the maximum amount that can be pulled on that neutral at any given time. And so that would be if 0 amps are being pulled on one leg and the maximum is being pulled on the other, that is the maximum amount that you would see on that neutral. And you would never see any more than that. Now, if you install it with 2 separate breakers and you accidentally put them on the same leg, or say put them on phase A, let's say, or leg A in a 12240 volt panel, then you're going to get what's called a cumulative effect. That means if I'm pulling 20 amps on one and I'm pulling 20 amps on the other, then that neutral is going to see 40 damn amps and you're going to burn that sucker up. Okay, and that's when you're going to start to see those neutrals that are white start to turn brown, okay, or get very discolored. That tells you that you probably have a multi-wire branch circuit done improperly somewhere in this panel. So that's a little troubleshooting tip for you, okay? So there's reasons why we do what we do in the code, okay? But it's very popular to have a split wire receptacle is to control one receptacle with a switch and then to leave one receptacle hot all the time. Where is this also done a lot, by the way, is this is also done quite a bit in, let's say, bedrooms. It's not as popular anymore, but when you're doing your 6-foot, 12-foot layout, the code requires in 210.70 to have a lighting outlet in the bedroom, right? Habitable room, lighting outlet. And it's to be switched, right? Well, there is an allowance in there to say, you know what? If you don't want to put a lighting outlet in that bedroom, let's say, I will let you switch a receptacle. But you can't switch the entire receptacle. Why? Because if you switch the entire receptacle, then you mess up your 6-foot, 12-foot rule where you have to have a receptacle at all times based on 6-foot, 12-foot, so that no point along the wall you're more than 6 feet from a receptacle, right? So if you switch a duplex, one receptacle meets that spacing requirement, then the other receptacle that you're switching meets the lighting outlet or the allowance to switch a receptacle in lieu of a lighting outlet in that bedroom. So you meet the best of both worlds if you want to do that. Now, a little tip for me, my brother doesn't like me do this, but that one receptacle that I happen to be breaking the tabs on the hot side and switching, I turn it upside down so the ground is on top. The code doesn't care, ground up, ground down, doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, I do it that way for an example. The reason I do it that way is for when somebody's laying out the room, they know exactly which receptacle is being switched, okay? Right? Now, Battle says, before FCI, we did 2 bedrooms in a multi-wire setup. I believe they make multi-wire AFCIs now. I believe they do, where you can share the neutral. Costly, expensive, not worth it. I just rather run a separate circuit and be done with it. That type of scenario. So since nothing requires me to I can do more than one bedroom on the circuit. I could pick up the hallway on that circuit. I could pick up the master bedroom lighting circuit on that circuit too. So I'm going to get my bang for my buck anyway. So rather than try to do, an AFCI on a multi-wire branch circuit, I'm probably going to just maximize the type of things that are on that circuit so that I knew that I would have to run a separate branch circuit anyway, that type of thing, okay? AFCI outlets in a bedroom on a 2-pole breaker. If you can find an AFCI that's designed for 2-pole application, okay, sure. If you can find them, I'm assuming they're available. I don't know, okay? All right, but normally a multi-wire branch circuit would cause a problem on a traditional AFCI, that type of thing would be a problem. All right, let's see here. Where are we at? Okay, so here's what we're talking about. So this one on the left, here we've got 2 coming in, and I'm assuming because of the yellow color of the actual sheeting that this is, and that's not a code requirement, that's just what the industry does. So we'll assume that these are 12 gauge cables. So this looks like a 12-3 with ground coming into the box. And so I want to get, this receptacle is one circuit, this one's the other circuit, and it's feeding through, so it's continuing on. Okay, so here I'm coming in with the black, okay, and I'm splicing right here, so this is going to go out to the next one, wherever that may be. And then it comes in here, and it goes over to this top one, right? And this tab is broken, okay? Break this tab. And then the red one comes in, goes in here, all right, passing through, going on down circuit somewhere else. And then it's going to the bottom, and then this tab is broken. And it has the neutral, the tab is left in place right here, okay? So this all's coming through. So in this scenario, I have 2 separate branch circuits, right? And it's sharing a neutral. And then it's just carrying it on downstream, okay? Now, look at this one over here, all right? So this one, I have a neutral coming in, going here, right? And then I have this neutral coming right here, okay? This wouldn't work. So this is an improper way to do it. Now, over here, if I break the ties, this part's right. But over here, it's not working because it's broken right here, and it's not going to continue on through the circuit, okay? So this would be an improper way to do this. This would not be a true multi-wire branch circuit application right here. So again, leave the tab intact on the neutral side, okay? And over here, and then over here, we don't, one of the other things, when you get into commercial, we also don't want to, if we're doing a multi-wire branch circuit application, we do not want the neutral to use the device as the key device that separates these loads, okay? That type of thing. Not gonna do this. We don't want to use the device itself as the splicing device, okay? So this is very common in commercial. You don't want to do this. You want to make sure you do this right here. Do it this way. Make a splice. All right, and here you're going to see this right here. This is what I was just referring to in 300, okay? This is very common for commercial. Don't let the device be the splicing component for your neutral conductor, okay? So here it says, when multi-wire circuits are installed, terminals and receptacles or other wiring devices are not to serve as the splice, okay? So 300.13b states, in a multi-wire branch circuit, the continuity of that grounded conductor, so we don't let this device dictate the continuity, because if you pull this device off, then you now are not dividing the loads to the neutral. You are now turning a 120 volt load with a shared neutral into a potential 240 volt load with no neutral, and that's going to cause a problem for anything that may be plugged into that circuit. So you cannot rely on the device, okay, to do that. Okay, so when a multi-wire branch circuit is used, as a means must be provided to disconnect simultaneously at the same time, you heard me talk about that, all the hot conductors at the panel board where the circuit originates. 2-pole breaker, 2 single-pole breakers with identified handle ties, those type of things are what you're going to do. You want to be able to disconnect it all, okay? And this is what we're talking about right here. All right, so these are 2 separate circuits coming to this device. Tab is broke. This is one circuit this is one receptacle, and this is one receptacle. Remember, a duplex is 2 receptacles, by the way. Okay. So interesting fact. Could I install simplex single receptacles around my room and be compliant with the code? Yes. When it requires you to put receptacles in, it does not require you to put duplexes in. It just makes more sense to put duplexes in to have the ability to plug more things in. Okay, so a duplex just happens to be multiple receptacles. Okay, so here you see 210.4b. I'll zoom in so you can see this. 210.4b and 210.7 require that a means must be provided to simultaneously disconnect both ungrounded conductors at the panel board where the branch circuit originates. This could be a 2-pole switch with fuses, a 2-pole circuit breaker, a 2 single-pole breakers with identified handle tie. So you have options. But if you want to go with this layout, then that's what you got to do. All right. Here's another example. So let's see what we're talking about here. So here's a circuit coming in, number one, coming in, comes into this junction box, right? And you see that it's sharing a neutral, but it's 2 separate circuits, okay? So this one comes off and hits a GFCI here, right? And this GFCI is going to protect everything downstream, okay? So protects everything downstream, okay? And then on this circuit, it's using the red, comes out, and it's just hitting a standard receptacle here. This may be the receptacle, in the past, this may be the receptacle for the refrigerator, because if it wasn't serving the countertop, it didn't have to be GFCI. But now, in 2023, all receptacles in the kitchen have to be GFCI, so that made my example kind of moot. But in the old days, I would come and hit the receptacle for the refrigerator, and then pop up on the countertop, and that's where I'd put my first GFCI, okay? That's where it would be. And then I would continue around and all around the counter, that type of thing. But as you can see here, you have many options in how you can do it. And these are 2 separate circuits, by the way. 2 separate circuits. But here I'm going to put in, okay, a simultaneously disconnected device. Means a 2 single poles with a identified handle tie or a 2-pole breaker right here, okay? All right, let's see here. Receptacles and outlets. We're getting close. Bear with me. I'm going to keep going here. Article 100 defines a receptacle and a receptacle outlet. A single receptacle connected to a circuit must have a rating not less than the rating of the circuit. You saw that earlier. So if I have a 15 amp circuit, then I have to have a receptacle. If it's a single, at least rated 15 amps. If I have a 20 amp rated a circuit and I'm using a single receptacle, then the single receptacle has to be at least 20 amps. If I have a 40 amps circuit with a single receptacle, can I install a 50 amp rated device on it? Absolutely I can. It is a receptacle that's rated equal to or greater than the branch circuit rating. However, I have to be very careful about the load that I'm putting into that branch circuit. So an example of this would be a single receptacle for a range that, based on the range's calculation, it allows me to put in a 50 amp receptacle, but the load itself would be not exceed would be protected by the 40 amp overcurrent protected device, and that would be perfectly acceptable, that type of thing, okay? And it goes without saying, common sense, that if my load was over 40 amps, then why would I be putting that on a 40 amp overcurrent protected device anyway? So that should be a common sense thing. So get what I'm saying? Next, it says circuits rated 15 amps supplying 2 or more receptacles are not permitted to contain receptacles rated over 15 amps. Okay, so this is a scenario whereas I cannot put a 2-pole 15, okay, so think about this. If the circuit is rated 15 amps, okay, and I'm going to show you this in the code real quick. I might have it doesn't have a diagram. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the code really quick since I'm here. This would be what we're talking about right here, okay? So there was the first one we looked at, right? So the next we're talking about the receptacles, and here's the one where I told you about the 40 and 50 amp permitted right here, okay? There you go. Here we're talking about the requirements. And let's see if I can get to, let's see, where are we at? Let's see if I've got, let's see right here. All right. So here was the single receptacle. Sorry. There's your single receptacle requirement. Okay. A single receptacle installed on the individual brand current shall have an amp capacity rating not less. Doesn't say it can't be more, but it can't be less than the brand circuit. So that's the rating of the single receptacle. So 15 amps got to be at least 15. 20 has got to be at least 20. Okay. All right. Now, what I was talking about is when we're dealing with, okay, receptacle ratings. When you have what? Where the branch circuit, where it's connected branch circuit supplies two or more receptacles or two or more outlets. A duplex receptacle, folks, is two or more. It's two. A duplex is two. Okay? So this means that this right here applies to a duplex receptacle. Okay? All right? All right? So let's go down here and look right here. So here's what we were talking about. So the circuit rating. If it is a 15 amp rated circuit, then the receptacle has to have a rating of 15 amps. Can't exceed that. That's what we were talking about, okay? And that's what it said back when we have a circuit rated 15 amperes and it supplies a duplex, then it can only be 15 amps. However, this is where people get kind of go wonky in the head when it comes to the kitchens. In a kitchen countertop, if the circuit is rated 20 amperes, then I am permitted to use a duplex receptacle, let's say, that is rated 15 amperes. Or 20 amperes. And you're saying, well, Paul, that doesn't make sense. Well, the internal guts on a 15 is also rated for 20, right? So you're saying, well, wait a minute, then why can't I use that 15 duplex? Why do I have to be limited on a 15? Why can't I put a 20 amp on that 15 branch circuit? Why can't I do that? It's because of the potential to overload it based on what's available. In other words, if it's a 15 amp overcurrent device, you have a 20 amp rated receptacle, and its faceplate design could encourage people to plug in loads that exceeds 15 amperes. And if that's the case, you're going to have a lot of tripping on the 15 amp overcurrent device. And constant tripping of a device is never a good thing. Okay? It's never constant intentional tripping of a device is not what we want. Okay, so it sends that message of being able to overload something based on its configuration. Now, with a 20 amp circuit, knowing that the internal guts are rated 15 or 20, then I can use a device that's rated 15 or 20 for that because we know the internal guts are rated for it. And because this circuit is rated 20, then we can be okay. We're not going to be taxing out the overcurrent protected device because we know that the receptacle device is adequate to handle it. It's the overcurrent device that we were worried about, okay? So that's why that is that way, okay? Now, one thing you'll notice is this is a two or more rule. So again, if I have a single 15 amp rated device, single, I can't install that, okay, on a 20 amp circuit, okay? Or can I? Sure you can. Remember it said that the receptacle has to be equal to or greater than the rating of the individual branch circuit or the branch circuit for the individual single receptacle. 20 is greater than 15. It wouldn't prohibit it for the single application to do that, just like you can do with a duplex. However, reverse that. Can I put a 15 amp rated simplex single on a 20 amp? And the answer to that is no, because remember what it said earlier? It said for a single receptacle, the rating of the receptacle has to be equal to or greater than the rating of the branch circuit. See how that works? If you didn't get it, go back and watch it on the replay. It'll make sense. I promise you, it'll make sense. All right, let's end this up. All right, so receptacle, it's okay. So right here, this is your box. Before I put anything in it, this, my friends, is the outlet. The device goes into it, right? This is where the people that submit those changes to change the words of an outlet don't understand the code. An outlet is a point on the wiring system where a connection is made in order to supply equipment that is powered from the electrical system. Whether it's hardwired from a junction box or whether it's brought to a box like this that you actually put a device inside of it, this is the outlet. Okay, when a receptacle is connected at the outlet point, The outlet is referred to at that point as a receptacle outlet because that's what's installed in it. We're learning all kinds of terminologies today, right? Now, when a luminaire is connected at a outlet point or an outlet, then it becomes a lighting outlet, okay? So it's all dependent on what you connect to that, okay? Now, if it's a junction box underneath the counter and you're coming out of it with your whips over to your appliance, say a garbage disposer or whatnot, then it is hardwired. That is still an outlet. It's a point where you're taking that whip to supply the appliance. It's still an outlet. So that's so important with terminology. So we get it when you say, oh, there's an outlet here, outlet here. Yeah, you're right. There is an outlet there. But are you referring to the device or are you referring to the box itself? Why is that important? The terminologies. Well, because, for example, in kitchen countertop, when it requires a receptacle to be, it requires an outlet spacing. It doesn't matter whether you put a simplex in it or a duplex in it. It wouldn't really matter, that scenario, okay? Now, here's a neat thing. I remember doing some efficiency for up in the University of Virginia years ago, and they had one little space for the countertop that was only 13 inches. So it required a receptacle, but it was a kitchen, so it also required a minimum of 2 small appliances. And you're thinking, dude, it had all the elements of a dwelling. It's only a 13-inch counter. Well, the code is the code. I had to get at least 2 small appliance branch circuits there, and they both had to serve a countertop, okay? I only had one countertop, so what do you think I did? Well, what I did was I ran a 12-3 up there, and I broke the tab, and I used the top receptacle as the one, and I used the bottom receptacle as the other, and I met that requirement. Other people may have put a quad in there and put two duplexes in there and met one receptacle was one circuit and the other receptacle was the other circuit. Some people may have run 2 separate 12-2s there, that type of thing. I don't worry about it because I know how multi-wire branch circuits work, okay? Doesn't matter if I share the neutral. If you do it right, then it's perfectly fine whether I ran 2 separate branch circuits or I ran a multi-wire branch circuit. It still works the same way. It's perfectly fine. I still have the same capacity at that countertop. So again, I was being efficient because we weren't getting, this was a project where there wasn't a lot of money involved. It was for the university and that type of thing. So that's just how I did it. You guys can be creative however you want. That's just kind of how I lived back in the day. I tried to squeeze every bit of dollar and still meet the code. That type of thing. Okay, so let's go. All right, we're almost done. All right, we're not going to go to that. So let's take it back. So let's spin the wheel for anybody that's still here. We will spin the wheel for you. For you that took off, then I'm so sad for you.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Big dog.
If you took off and you didn't stay, that tells me you have no persistence. Okay, you're not dedicated. You don't have enough drive. You just took off and went somewhere. Okay, you know what? I can't help it if you're lazy. Let's go. Dude, I've given y'all a lot of tidbits in today's show. Okay? Dude, where are y'all going to get this stuff? Where are y'all going to get all people that just want to throw out to you every morning? Ain't nobody else out there doing this. What they do is they script it, and they have little training sessions of scripted so they know what they're going to say. Dude, I free fly, man. I freestyle every morning. All right, so let's see. Peter, I'm freestyling, bro. All right, Peter, let's say Lebita. And you're in the drawing for the knife, my friend. Okay, those knives, again, little knife, awesome, that type of thing. All right, let's do another one. You're in the drawing for that, my friend, for the second quarter drawing. I'm getting an excavator today. Woo, 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 woo. All right, Michael, I don't know if I've seen you around before, my friend. Did I not welcome you this morning? If I didn't, welcome. Glad you're here. You're in the NFC. Now, that is a promotional card. Very few are being given out. This, when you tap somebody's phone, it'll bring up all of our information, but you can reprogram it to do whatever you want. It's free, doesn't cost you anything to reprogram it. You can get it from the App Store or Google Store or whatever, a free NFC software. I'll even tell you where. Okay, when we send you this, I'll give you a link to where you can show you how to do it, okay, if you win that. But it's a great promo card. All right, congratulations on that. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kendra. You do. Sometimes you'll have to watch these things. This is why I tell people. That's why the replays are so great in the afternoon at 5. And to rewatch it, you might pick up something else. Oh, by the way, I just rapid fire. And challenge me. Tell me, Paul, I think you're wrong. I love a good fight. All right, Charles. Let's see here. Charlie is the fast track. I think you already have that, Charlie. So let's spin again for you. I'm sure you already have that. Fast Tracks 2, by the way, if you folks don't have it, so much better than YouTube. I'm just saying. All right, you're in the drawing for Trade Hog. If y'all have not tried Trade Hog yet, ask it a question. Trade Hog is amazing. Tradehog.net. Go check it out. All right. Good job, Charlie. You're in the drawing for that. Let's go again, folks. Let's spin it. Kendra is absolutely right there. I think you already have. Wait a minute, Battle. Do you already have that? I think it's Jonathan, right? I got the name right. I'm trying to electric. Do you already have the Fast Tracks tube? If you do, I'll spin it again. I think one of the things about the fact that I can spit out code and answer stuff is what usually made me unique when I do my stage thing. Like if all of you want to join me in Virginia later this summer, where I'm going to do my continuing ed, you'd be surprised. I do things totally different in a seminar. I tell you code changes, but I go and tell you all kinds of things. You never know what I'm going to say in a live seminar on a stage somewhere. So if you ever get a chance to attend one of my live shows, it is totally different than what you see on here. So it's pretty cool. People love it. So, all right, we're going to spin again. Let's go. But sometimes you folks that have questions, you've been probably going for years with questions, and you can't find your answers anywhere. And that's what I have a lot of pride in doing. To be able to answer your questions for you, that type of thing. All right, you're in the drawing for a NUMF. You're in the drawing for a NUMF of the basic Trade Hog, okay? All right, good luck to that. All right, last one, let's go. Cool, thank you, sir. Hopefully you went over and registered for the Fast Tracks tube and we got you upgraded. If not, holler out at me. Christopher MDE, you're in the drawing for the Ohms wheel coin. That is an awesome coin. And I'm in the mood to give away one more, so let's go. So you're in the drawing for that, Christopher. It's an awesome coin. I don't have one here, but we got it. All right, Skiaddle or Skyaddle or whatever that's pronounced. You are in the drawing for the NFC cards. Promo, and I'm telling you that is going to be one of the better giveaways that we do, because I am telling you they are freaking cool. If you get a Linktree account, you can link in your account for your customers. You can tap it. It can go to your pay page. If you accept payments online, it can go to your Facebooks or your YouTube channel or wherever you want it to go to, your website, or you could just leave it like us and you could be one of our spokespeople and you can share the love and let everybody know about us. And we appreciate you doing that if you choose to do that. Okay. All right. All right, so congratulations, you're in the drawing for that, and we're going to give away as many of those NFC cards that I can. So I make sure that I'm also ordering a lot more of those, and they're not cheap for these NFC cards, these metal ones, but we want to give as many away as we can, all right? All right, folks, I went way over today. I apologize to everybody out there. It's coffee hours today. I appreciate you all. Hopefully you got something out of today's lesson. Go back and watch the replay. There's an awful lot to take. Do me a favor. I am a bit long-winded. I do drag things out. I'm sorry for some people that say, Jesus, Paul, I can't take 2 hours of my day with you every freaking day. I understand. But if you watch it on the replay, you can jump around if you want and do whatever you want to do. That's up to you. But again, it's there for you, and I appreciate it. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. Be careful. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Peace.